Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are joining us from. I'm Nivarti Jairam, currently based out of Bangalore in India, and with me, I have Ashish. How are you?
Good, Nivrati. How are you doing?
I'm doing great too. Thanks for joining us today. I think Ian is caught up somewhere, so he should be joining us, and once he joins, we will continue the discussion with him. So today we are looking to explore a bit on lean portfolio management and also touch a bit upon the nine principles that I see Agile brought out on lean portfolio management, which I found to be quite interesting. Ash, what's your view on those? Did you look at
Yeah,
them?
I think when I think about principles, it gives a very clear perspective of what we should be kind of thinking when kind of implementing lean portfolio management. And I think it's very interesting that while these principles are kind of lived within every organization, it's just not visualized better or bought out better. So I think this will give a good perspective. So I'm really, really excited on that front.
Great. So we will get to the principles in a while. So to start off again, we always say start with why, right? So famously brought out by Simon Sinek. So what is your view, Ash? Why do you think we need or organizations need lean portfolio management? What's your view on that?
So if we look at traditionally, right? Traditionally, we've always kind of structured our organization from a very strategic perspective, and we still do that. But when we look at strategy, we look at even financial strategy, and that kind of sometimes becomes an hindrance in terms of how we adapting to the external changing environment. So I think when we look at lean portfolio management, a lot of people think that lean portfolio management is only about funding, and it is not just funding, right? If one thing that we've learned in the last 2 years with COVID happening especially is that if you're not adapting to change and not adapting to the environment, and even for that matter, if we look at the dot-com boom that happened, right, in 2000s, the dot-com boom happened. But I think now in the 2010s, what's happening and post is the entrepreneur boom, right? And these entrepreneurs are coming across around the globe with new mindset. There are this whole concept of venture capital is the series funding, which was always there, but it's now kind of visualized better. And I think with the ever evolving space, and if I'm not mistaken, uh, one of the famous guys kind of mentioned that if you're not changing or adapting towards the changing environment and kind of falling back to the relic of your previous state, then you're going to see no change in the future. Your end is in near terms. So I think when we talk about that, it becomes much more important from that perspective, that how are we thinking our strategies into eliminating waste, into bringing perspective of being adaptive to the environment, the changing environment, and actually being a support system or creating a support system within the organization to help these new changes that are coming.
Hmm, interesting. So when again, when I think about it, right, as you rightly mentioned, that probably people feel it's a financial management mechanism, but it's a means, right? But again, it also helps us to really tune organization to the right priorities that we have,
Yeah.
right? We are talking about moving to value stream funding or budgeting models. That
Mhm.
means you have, as an organization, you have the ability to prioritize what you think is more valuable at any given point in time,
Yeah.
and probably better align your investment to the strategies
Mhm.
that keep dynamically changing or need to keep dynamically changing in today's world. So if
Yeah.
you think about, and you brought COVID as one of the examples, definitely the moment when COVID hit, a lot of organizations did not or would not have really thought about 100% people working from home.
Yep.
That could be a distant reality for many organizations, and suddenly when everybody had to work from home, there is a big shift in priority of what you are looking at as an organization. right? How you are looking to enable people to be working from home. That's a big shift in terms of what you are spending on. Yes, your business needs to be relevant, but if people are not able to work, then obviously there is no relevance for you to survive, right? So that I think is more feasible when you are really looking at adopting lean portfolio management.
Yeah.
How you are able to reprioritize quickly, how you are able to reprioritize and map your priorities to the new strategies that you are defining as an organization. And it was interesting to see one of the reports that I keep referring to, last year from McKinsey.
Mhm.
The disruption cycle is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, and the impact of disruption is exponentially higher right today. So it's quite interesting that for organizations to move forward, and even if you're not thinking about surviving, it's thriving and or excelling, for anything to be as an organization, it makes sense to have lean portfolio management adopted at an enterprise level.
Yep. And I think very interestingly, Nivrati, if you think about it, right, organizations have the ability and capability. It's just that they've not realized it. If I have to give you an example, when you talk about COVID, and kind of adapting to how things have changed, people went. No one was asked to come to offices. People went working from home. I know organizations who are very stringent about not giving out laptops or having people to work from home just because of either security issues or either it was multiple issues or governance or regulations and so on and so forth within their organization. These same organizations pivoted, they suddenly had funding to bring in laptops to people, and in fact gave an additional, maybe at times I've heard $1,000, I've heard 750, I've heard $2,000 even to individuals within the organization to go and set up a work from home or an home office. Now, how did this happen? How did this shift happen? Of course, there was, did they think that we're going to do this? Probably not. But they suddenly adapted and used some other funds to enable the tactical approach or a tactical need in that given environment. So the question comes out, does the organization has the ability and the capability? Probably yes. But do they want to do is the question.
That's interesting. What I also feel is many times, yes, they have a capability, but do they have the right structure in place to do that?
Mhm.
Do they have, are they visualizing their systems and business processes in that sense to do it, right?
Mhm.
So you talk about today, even probably more mature organizations as well, if you ask them to provide us an end-to-end view of a customer journey
Mhm.
or a business process within the organization, where the request originates from, how does the request fulfill, right? And what is the overall lead time or the waiting times, cycle time between the whole for the whole process. It would be interesting to see, do we really have that level of maturity in organizations, right?
Yep.
Adopting lean portfolio management, and I think there is a good question also coming in from
Mhm.
Gafar Imtiaz. Is there a correlation between lean and finance, and how strong this relationship,
Mhm.
if any, is? It's a good question. What is the lean is about optimizing, right? Optimizing is the key. How efficient can you be, right? So
Mhm.
that could be even in the finance as well. How efficient are you at managing your finances? Where is the waste coming in terms of your investment? Where is the value coming from, and are
Mhm.
you really focusing your investment on the most valuable aspects of your organization?
Mhm.
So I really think there is a great relation between lean and finance also. What's your view there, Ash?
I think a very very interesting question. Thanks, Gafar, for kind of bringing that. I tend to kind of go back to a little bit more on a personal space, right? So when we think as an individual from a financial perspective, when we are spending our own money, How does that correlate from lean and finance? Because we have $1,000, are we going to go and spend complete $1,000, or are we going to think that is this going to help us in terms of moving forward, or is the in can be any shape or form, right? And when we talk in that front as well, something that really helps is the guardrails. If I kind of want to bring that in. So say for example, if me and my partner, right? If I have to go in and without even consulting my partner, go and buy a $80,000 car, what's going to happen in my house? It's going
Yeah.
to be ruckus, right? But if I go and buy like a 50, 60, or $100 pair of shoes, it's not going to be that much of a challenge, right? So I think when we talk about lean, optimizing the value, optimizing the flow, eliminating the waste, and are we triggering finances, or are we looking at where is this placed, even in terms of from an organizational perspective? Is this helping us to run the business, keep the lights on? Is it helping us to kind of grow the business, or is it helping us to expand the business, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about that, the biggest challenge I feel is the command and control that the finance has over organizations. So when we talk about lean and eliminating waste, the first waste I feel that kind of holds the organization from becoming lean is the financial side of the organization. And do they realize that irrespective within a year, that we have a certain amount of money that we need to spend to either grow, to expand, or to run? And your financial fiduciaries would have that historical data based on how things are going. And can we actually bring in the mindset of decentralizing those thoughts by actually bringing in the champions who know where the work is getting done and actually reevaluating it? So I think that is my thought. I'm not sure, Gafar, if you're still on, and if that helps you in terms of the question that you kind of asked.
Yeah, I guess it's true. It's absolutely true, and it applies to not just and lean portfolio management. I was about to get to that in at the probably some stage later, but you invariably brought it in, right? So it's not just for organizations;
Mhm.
it's also at a personal level how optimized you are in managing your own finances, how well you know what is the most valuable aspect of your life that you want to spend at this time on.
Yep.
Probably we do that, more in a flow rather than doing it in a more organized manner. So for those who are thinking lean portfolio management is only for organizations, probably it's applicable to our own life as well, as much as it is for organizations.
Yep.
Yes, I think there is another question, but it's more about the, yeah, John. Yes, this is being recorded, so we will be posting this on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Nivarthi Jairam, so you can always look at it. And we think we have Ian. Hello, Ian.
Hello, I'm joining you from England in a hotel. I'm not getting great internet, Navati. I hope it'll improve over the next half hour. Lovely to be with you.
Okay, I think we are almost seeing that yes, there is the internet is a bit of an issue, but we will see how well we can hear from you, Ian. So one of the things we were talking about, and there was a question. Probably I'll bring you in on that question and see what inputs you have. Um, Gafar hosted a question: is there a correlation between lean and finance, and how strong this relationship, if any? Of course, myself and Ash did share some inputs on that. Anything you want to uh, talk from your experience or your views, Ian, on that question?
I think Ian is kind of stuck with.
Okay, I think he's kind of frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get back to him. So we did talk quite a bit about why we organizations or even at a personal level we should be looking to adopt lean portfolio management. But what actually is lean portfolio management, Ash?
So lean portfolio management, I think it is more of a strategic approach from an enterprise level to understand and achieve your future, a future state. A lot of organizations, have this thought that they want to be somewhere.
Hmm.
But again, the two big questions that I tend to ask organization and the leaders is that while you want to be there, and that may be your vision, do you know that what is your ability and capability to get there? Right? It's like, I want to be at the highest rank within the organization. I want to be a CEO. Everyone wants to be that. But do I have the ability or capability to be there? What's happening around me? What is my strength? What is my weakness? What are my threats around my environment? What are the opportunities that I can kind of look into, right? And kind of evaluating the ability and capability and kind of working through that. And when we talk about even from a principles perspective, right? How can we look at the customer, or how can we look at the product from an organizational perspective? So I think all these things cumulatively help us to streamline our future vision, and kind of helps us to give a purpose within the organization from an alignment side of things, and also gives us a visibility in terms of where are we putting even our finances, for that matter. I mean, should we be looking, and there are different ways to look at when we talk about lean, the concept of lean startup, right? Are we constantly measuring things that we are doing at a portfolio level? It is not just at a team level or a program level, but multiple programs that create a portfolio. How many portfolios do you have within an organization? Do you even realize that you have portfolios? Do you need to manage your portfolio? So I think these are more cumulatively my thought when we talk about LPM or lean portfolio management.
Hmm. And when I look at it, right, it also gives us the ability to visualize what actually is most valuable to us. Where is the revenue being generated? Where is the value being provided to the customer? How do you map that value to what we are spending,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
I think it also helps us better prioritize. It also helps us better organize as an organization, right?
Mhm.
And another thing also, which probably mostly gets neglected, is it gives greater autonomy also to the teams
Mhm.
to be
Yeah.
able to decide what to spend on. So and another thing is, it also gives you the connect right from strategic objectives of the organization, how it is flowing to a portfolio or a program, and that view for each and every member of the organization to see where I am contributing to. Probably that's a good engagement factor as well from a people perspective, if you think what LPM can do for organizations.
Yeah, I think that, while you were saying it, it just came back to my mind. It I think when we talk about lean portfolio management, it gives the organizational teams the what they need to look at. And when we look at people's perspective, or when we look at teams perspective, it helps them to then define how they want to achieve the what,
Yeah.
right? So so I think absolutely, when we look from that perspective, the transparency, the visualization, the connect, the rollback, even from that perspective, how are we creating an innovative cycle within the organization, or giving the ability to bring things from top to bottom, and from bottom up. Hey Ian, see you back.
Hey Ian, welcome back. So again, I'll start you off with questions. Somehow I'm feeling that I should start Ian with questions always. Hopefully, Ian, you are okay with this. There is a
Well,
question again.
it appears that my internet is now working, so hopefully that's you.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. So there is a question from Puneet. How is LPM different from OKR?
Okay. Okay, so OKRs, objectives, key results.
Yeah.
They're a way of measuring how you're doing on a program. They're measurements that get results. In fact, on the LPM course, we do talk about OKRs. There's a whole section on that. which is on day 3 of our 4-day course idea, where we talk about measurement that gets results. So that's how that works. OKRs, in their essence, are very different from other kinds of ways of measuring, and they're all to do with interim points and lead and lag indicators and how you get those. So that's what OKR is. LPM is like an umbrella term for the move from what used to be called program and portfolio management, which was the old way of saying, let's make sure we organize the whole company really thoroughly and make sure everything is buttoned down and commanded from the top, to a new form called lean portfolio management, where the word lean's there for a reason, which is you want to make it reducing of waste, you want to get it better organized. That's why the course has got things like how you might reorganize your operating model to match your lean aspirations. So that's a long answer. The short answer is OKRs are the measurement. LPM is the practice of creating a lean portfolio across your whole company. Did that help?
Yeah, of course. Ash, you have any inputs?
No, I think Ian, you nailed it when you said it's OKR is a function within the LPM, right? It's an umbrella. So even if you look at program management, and if you're kind of looking at different things that we have within program, or even for that matter, say for example, Agile, and then Scrum and Kanban and XYZ, these are all functions, right? Things, it helps us to do the how, right? And the umbrella is more Scrum. So absolutely, I kind of agree with you on that front, Ian.
Yeah, just to add, right, on that topic. Sorry, Ian, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, OKR is a great way of measuring. It's definitely the best way of measuring, the newest way. It comes from Measure That Matters. It's really good. I'm really pleased that part of the LPM course brings that up. And as you guys will both know, we also keep that same idea in both the ENT and the CAT courses that we also teach, the idea of introducing you to OKRs. And if anyone's really keen on a really good video on OKRs, Jonathan Smart has done a really good video, which is strangely called Okay and Not Okay OKRs. It's a very strange title if you're not English, but if you're English, it makes sense. It's sort of based on a very famous song that English people know from their past. But Jonathan Smart, you look him up. He does a great talk on it as well.
Okay, thank you. And just to add to it, right? So OKR tells you what you want to achieve as an organization, and what results will tell you whether you have accomplished those objectives. And LPM is a kind of practice or means that can help you accomplish those OKRs. So that's how I look at it. And yes, I think we're getting quite good questions, interesting questions as well. Hari, again, one of great friends and colleagues. What are the necessary structural or cultural changes required to get LPM to work in organizations? That's a great question. Ash, you want to take a hit?
Sure. So I think let me first talk about culture, because it is strategy. It's culture is strategy for breakfast, right? And then people eat, I don't know, culture for brunch is what I've heard now. So it goes back to the organizational mindset, that do they have the mindset to make this change? Like I said in the beginning when we started, right, that there are challenges from a financial perspective, that there is a lot of at times command and control when they're looking at funding aspect, right? Or even when we look at how are we kind of going to approach this from a leadership perspective. So I think that mind shift, the growth mindset is definitely needed when we are looking at an LPM. That are we open to experiment? Because maybe one approach may not, or a set approach may not be the appropriate approach in near future. And are we okay to pivot, right? In terms of structure, I would say structure does become somewhat necessary, but it can evolve based on how the culture is evolving. So if we go in and kind of start changing the structure first because we want to implement LPM, I don't know, it may be the right or the wrong approach. But at the same time, maybe want to look at one portfolio, the shortest portfolio that an organization has, explore and see what really made sense. Can we even look at a more of a holocratic kind of an approach, that we are all in this together from a leadership perspective, and we're kind of working on governance, and we all working together? So I think that's what my take is. I think I saw Ian kind of giving a smile. So Ian, any thoughts?
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, I mean, I've got a story to tell here, of course. For a large petrochem telco, I was involved specifically in the lean portfolio management for digital. And it is a little bit of chicken and egg, as you were saying, Ash, because what we did was we reorganized all the digital departments together into one function. So your question, a great question. Thank you very much for it. It is, in a sense, that was the structural part. We put it together because we believed, we had a hypothesis that all these areas together really were digital and should work together and not be separate everywhere. So we put them together, and then we said, okay, now you're all together, let's get a digital roadmap going. And what we found is our hypothesis wasn't quite right. That's the truth. And therefore we had to pivot after 6 months and change it slightly. But the main reason we were doing it was because we knew we weren't getting the best bang for the buck in how it was organized now. And that's what lean portfolio management, again, is all about, which is getting the best bang for your buck, isn't it? And so we did. And the reasons we pivoted, they were, in a sense, our first play was structural. We then gathered the portfolio together, started having the arguments. We had a cap on how we could spend. So all the departments in their old money wanted X. Now we're a digital department. They could only spend this, which was less than X. That difference needed to be negotiated down. And it wasn't just about keeping the cost down. It was that caused us to think again about what our portfolio should be. That's the thing that comes out in this, which is what should our portfolio be? Because, all these departments came with their demand, which isn't the same thing as the customer really needs it. That's another thing that came out. So we started with structure, but then our pivot was because of culture. We changed a little bit because of the culture we had, where some parts of the newly formed digital function didn't want to be digital, really. They were quite happy being where they were previously. So it's a great question. Are there necessary structural changes? Yes. Are there necessary cultural changes? Yes. But I would encourage you not to think about planning it and then fire and forget. I would encourage you to think, make what changes you need to see that are obvious, but then measure whether it worked or not in short increments. Because here's the bottom line, you never get it right first time. No matter what you do, you never get it right first time. In the old days, people used to do these reorgs and then they'd leave before the chickens came home to roost. Now we do it differently. We do the reorg and then we test whether it's doing the job or not and change again and again and again. And certainly, I think on the course, we talk about that specifically, about how you as a coach, as a change agent bringing this kind of change, need to prepare the leaders for the fact that whilst we are experts, whilst we're here to advise, we don't know each company we go to perfectly, and therefore there's always a need to pivot, to evolve it a bit better each time, and not go, here's my one answer that fits all, and it works for a massive petrotelco and a very small bank, and it also works for the niche boutique in London that sells boots, and it also works for a tea shop in Dallas, and it also works for a coffee shop in the Netherlands, which, by the way, they aren't random. They are a set of my customers. So, that's the rate we work in. So.
Yeah,
Did that help?
I agree. Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things, Hari, again, is to understand the maturity of the organization and its leadership currently in terms of what mindset they carry. Right? What you need is the ability to delegate when you are thinking really about implementing or adopting LPM as well. Is the leadership open to delegate that authority to make decisions? Most of the people are uncomfortable with that to start off. So I would say it's about the maturity of the organization and how well you have the strategic objectives, themes clearly defined currently in the organization. How well we know the connect between the product portfolios to our objectives, how we know we are contributing, and where does the value come from. I think those are some things which we definitely need answers to define what the changes are required, and that's what everyone was talking about. Continuing with Hari, I think he had one more question. Quickly, we can touch upon it before we move on to the next questions from Ali and Anu. Most product organizations are good at product feature roadmaps. Do we shift to outcome based roadmaps in LPM? If so, how we start? I think more than outcome based roadmap, it's more value based roadmap. So where is the organization? If you are to be customer centric, I think you need to look at clearly who are the people you are serving and what product of the organization is providing value to them, and then probably order them in the priority of value being delivered. And that would be my take to say that look at your customers, look at your revenue generation from the customers, what is the most value from organization perspective, and what is the most value that you are providing from a service perspective to the customer, and then try to map them, and then you look at you know uh, prioritizing based on the value provided versus the income received. But what's your view, Ash or Ian, if you want to take a hit?
I I think just to kind of add on to that is does your organization know who the customer is?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most of us don't, right? So,
So I think the first question is, do you even know your customer? And if you do, which is great, but then do you know how they feel and think about you? And how can you serve them? Right? You may be in an organization which might be a startup with one product line, one product value, or you may be in an organization, you know, where you might have multiple products, multiple portfolios, and multiple customers. And even with one product, you can have multiple customers. So it goes back, like you said, I'm completely on with you. Value based versus outcome based in terms of what value you're delivering. It can be an internal and external, it can be just customer satisfaction as a value. It may not be monetary, right? But are we looking from that perspective? Engagement, because your value can change within the organization as you progress and as you kind of move on. My initial value might just be that I need engagement from the customer. My second value within the same value stream can completely change after a couple of years. While I have this engagement, how do I now look in terms of generating more leads, right? Then it can be more about how can I generate more numbers or maybe happiness for that matter. So I'm with you on that. Ian, if you wanted to kind of
Oh,
retain.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've had this problem very recently. I think the move from project to product is good, but it's not enough.
Mhm.
I think you have to move from product to customer. You have to move to customer. Here's my definition of a customer: someone who isn't being paid by the company to think about the customer, but someone who is actually the customer. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I was working at a company where they got a £2 million project to increase the speed with which they made a decision in principle to sell loans. And I'd arrived at the company and I said to the chief exec, I went, I want to meet some customers. And he wrote down a list of people in the company who represent customers. And I went, now, can I actually meet some customers? And he went, what do you mean? And I went, well, you sell these things through brokers and you sell direct to customers, don't you? And he went, yeah. And I went, can I meet some of those? And he went, oh, well, yeah, all right, if you want. So I spent a few days on customer calls, listening to customers talking about their loans. And I also got introduced to three of the largest brokerages in the country for this particular financial services. And I said to one of them, I said, if you could spend $1 million, what would you spend it on? And he told me, which is good. He said, if I was this financial service, I'd. And then I said, they're thinking of spending $1 million on making the decisions faster. And he went, oh, they don't need to make the decisions faster. They're already the fastest company in the market doing that. That's silly. So I went back to the CEO. I went, I'm sorry to be the bearer of very bad but very good news. The very bad news is this is what your customer thinks. The very good news is you don't have to spend $1 million wasted doing nothing. Now, that is proper lean portfolio management, isn't it? Getting to the customer. There's a saying that goes, if you're not embarrassed by the first product you put out there, you've waited too long to put it out. And it's never about how good the product is. It's always about how near you are to the customer, so you can find out what they think of your products and then pivot to that point immediately. WhatsApp, for example. WhatsApp was actually not a messaging system when it first started. It was a video system. It now does that as well, but it started as a video system. But they pivoted because they got a customer base, and all the customer base kept saying to them is, we don't need your video system. What we need is good texts. Do you see my point?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Harry, I hope that helped with your answer, by the way. The key is to organize the portfolio around proper customers.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you for that. So
I think
we
Never,
have-
that might also answer the question. I think someone asked JP Rajaram.
yeah, I think it was more a statement. At times, we treat people as customer, which is not the case anyway. Absolutely
yes.
right, JP. you're
JP,
on-
100%. I want to give you some thumbs up there, mate. Well done. That's exactly there. Well done. Some thumbs up from Ian. Brilliant. That's exactly correct.
Absolutely true.
You must find your customer, not a proxy for the customer, not an opinioner for the customer. And most companies have at least 9 people in the chain between you and the customer. Get rid of them. Move them aside. Get to the customer.
Yep.
Yeah. Next question. I think this is more about what are the first steps of starting LPM within the organization? What should I include in my proposal? I think what's the business case for LPM? I think one of the things that we probably will look at is about the challenges that we are facing as an organization today, right? So that could be our first starting point for a business case. And of course, I think Ash, you want to talk about the LPM canvas. I think that would be a good point for this to be looked at, right?
Yeah, I think it's still in construction on its version 2 or 3. But yeah, I think first thing I feel is the executive buy-in. Are they even ready for this change? The leadership buy-in at a portfolio level. Do we have a spearheading individuals or team that can really kind of help us to consolidate all these things, work with the leadership to kind of work through. And when I talk about portfolio canvas, I think one of the things that we're going to be touching in as a part of our LPM course as well within the 4 days is what are the aspects that we need to look at when we are kind of engaging the customer to move or kind of take this journey, right? Understanding the current, understanding the what, why, and the how. And again, the how will be completely different on individual organizations, as Ian said. But I think that is where, if I look at something where I would say to start with, to identify what are the abilities, capabilities, challenges, what are your near-term strategies, long-term, short-term, long-term goals, strategies that we can kind of achieve and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Something changed.
No, just I was trying to change it for a better layout.
Look like we're having a dance. It's quite good.
Yeah, great. I think we have one more question from Anu, and maybe I think Ian, you can take it as well. Do you suggest that we implement it one portfolio at a time, learn the lessons, and then go, more of a bottom up or a phased approach? Is that what you suggest? You might say it depends, but what is your view?
Yeah, I mean, the right answer is it does depend on the situation, of course. But let's talk through the 2 options. One option is you try and do it all at the top. You get some momentum doing that. You get some good buy-in. Usually, lean portfolio management is solving something that the company can see, certainly at the top and the bottom of the organization. Sometimes the mid-layer can't see it. They're lost in their control and their processes, but the people at the top, the real people at the top, and the people on the troops doing the work, they can see there's a lot of waste. So I think what you've got to do is either start at the top or start at the bottom, or even better, do a bit of both, and then create a pincer movement on the middle muddle that don't like it. So that, and I always say, work so fast and go so far that they can't stop you even if they tried. You want to be ahead of them. Usually the middle muddle like what they're doing and they don't like hard work, so you can always catch them. I think that's the truth. So your question, Anna, I think most of the time, I would want to find an area, what a consultant would say, low-hanging fruit. I would want to find an area where the work is going to come out very quickly, and it's also going to come out very good. And I would publicize that a lot, celebrate that success a lot. In the last 6 months in the Lego digital division, we have done the following big benefit changes. We've reduced waste by this amount. We've got to market earlier by this amount of time. And we think we can do it over the rest of the company as well. So my view, Anu, would be always to do that. And what are the big benefits? Well, honestly, the real big benefit is the word lean is in there for a reason. You're removing waste. That's the big thing you're doing. You're really removing waste. Someone famously once said, I spend 100 million on my marketing budget, and I know half of it's a waste of money. Unfortunately, I don't know which half. What you're doing here is you're reducing waste, and that's the big why. The business case is all about, I'm taking waste out of the system, and that could include reducing waste so you can get more done for the customer, but also, let's be honest, it can be reducing waste, therefore you can create a leaner, smaller company. Again, all three of us have been in situations where we've helped with that, and I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way. I mean, somebody said to me, how do you feel about reducing a workforce by 20%? And I go, I think about the 80% that I'm keeping in jobs, because if we don't do this change, they'll go. And we talk about this again on the course. The course is full of this why, the business case for it. My advice about a business case, by the way, is find some stories to tell that are what I call SWSs. The SWS, it stands for a stupid war story. It's something that provokes you, like I've just said about the marketing department, where half their budget was a waste, or I could tell a story about an NHS car park in England that they spent. It was a redesign of the car park, and they spent £9 million in order to create 2 more car park spaces. They had 360, and they finished with 362. 9 million to get 362 car park spaces. And my advice to anyone is get some of those stories, because if you got them, you can pop them in these business cases. And, at the real top level, the business case writing needs to be the positive side of it. But when you're talking to them and telling them stories, these stupid war stories make all the difference.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant example you gave. Do you suggest before adapting LPM, a company should have adopted agile and lean practices? I think it makes it easier, right? If they do have agile and lean, but do you think it's mandatory to have, or it's good to have?
Can I start that one? Do you mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing, I'm quoted as saying I live and breathe LPM. Here's why. Because if you imagine the company has got a lot to get right, and you've got to think of your beachhead into this company, okay? And you can come in from the HR department with agile and lean growth and mindset. The thing about coming with LPM is you're coming from finance, honestly, and finance have all the power. True power doesn't exist everywhere in an organization. It usually exists in places where resources are controlled, HR or finance, or where critical things for the future are being sorted out. That's somewhere as well. So I love working in any of those 3 areas of a company. So that's important. And why I think LPM is a great provoking start is because usually you've got a finance bod who is really keen on why this can make a difference. And you can work from that beachhead to all the other beachheads. So if someone said to me, we're not doing agile yet, but can we talk about LPM? I go, yeah, let's talk, because, look at the waste you've got. Yeah, we can reduce this by how much do you spend? Wow, you spend 2 billion a year. We can get that down. And how do we get it down? Well, it's all the stuff that we have to do. Plus, have you thought about agile? Because they pair very well. So my answer to the question, should you do agile first, actually is no. I think actually LPM is a better start in a lot of companies. However, latest survey I saw, certainly across the developing sort of worlds, India, America, Europe, wherever we've got the sort of best mindsets at the moment, 68% of all companies are now doing Agile in one form or another. So I don't think it's so much the case now of should they do Agile. It's more a case of they're not doing it well enough, and how can they do it better? And that is where LPM is your gold dust, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they are agile already, it makes it more easier for the teams to adopt and jump on the bandwagon. Yes. So next question, and there is another good question. How long do strategic themes stay valid and do not change without the need for repivoting? How to validate if our themes are valid from time to time? We'll take one question at a time. There are two questions, or probably more than two in that particular question, right? So, how long do strategic themes stay valid? That's a good question, Ash.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to what is your hypothesis of actually bringing this strategic theme, right? What are you trying to achieve out of it? Now, there might be that, okay, we want to be in XYZ market, and that is your reason for the strategic theme. And it may be that whatever the product that we deliver, we want our presence in the market. Maybe the product is not fully developed, you've created an MVP, and you are in those markets. Maybe at that point, it may not be relevant. But there is another competition that comes into play in those same markets. And while you wanted an MVP, you think now, I don't think this MVP approach is going to work. We need to revisit this and look at how can we change our hypotheses, or how can we kind of enhance our hypotheses to get a better value. Now, when I talk about that, it's again going back to the external constant changing environment. Are you able to pivot? And if that is to your organizational environment, right? While strategic themes gives us a perspective or a way to move forward, this becomes, it again goes back to, what is happening and how can we pivot on an ongoing basis based on what we've kind of really thought through, or what is our hypothesis. I think that's what my thought is.
Yeah, I guess so, because I think what is influencing that is strategic theme. What is the strategic objective that is driving it, right? So that is the key. And as long as you are in the right path to accomplish those objectives that these themes fulfill, and you are able to validate them with the right metrics that you define, and definitely I can think of Ian coming up with a story now for that. So how to that will validate, right, whether you really need to change, whether you really need to pivot. And that is where it all connects. Do you have the right objectives in place? Do you have the right connect between your portfolios and those objectives? How well you understand that, and whether you have right metrics in place to really measure what matters most to you as an organization, to say, yes, is this strategic objective relevant still, or the theme relevant, or even the portfolio relevant for me as an organization. Yeah, Ian, your take.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said. I just want to make a main point here, which is, what do we really mean by strategic? Sometimes what people think strategic means is long term, and sometimes they think it means important or critical. So, for example, my heart rate is strategic. It's very critical. I get it right all the time. My blood pressure is strategic. My weight is strategic. But actually, none of those, whilst they have long-term plans, they aren't long-term issues. They're critical issues right now. So, for example, I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. And the question around was how long before you have to look at them again. And the honest answer to that is, depends on your market. For example, if you're doing a piece of work for a fashion brand where the fashions change every 3 weeks, a 5-year strategic plan is useless. It just doesn't have any reality whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't. A large bank a 5-year plan, a strategic plan can be quite useful, and therefore you can have these strategic themes that work. But even banks these days, with the changing in the markets, I've just, again, a company I arrived at, they went, here's our 5-year plan. I went, you have no idea what the market's going to be like in 5 years. How on earth have you come up with this plan? To some degree, more and more, the strategic time frame, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, is coming more and more towards today. So I always call this the varifocal view. So like varifocal glasses, you've got to be able to read the short term, and you've got to be able to look at the long term at the same time. You've got to be able to do both. My question back to the person who asked the question is this: what's the long-term tempo of the economy you're working in? Because that matters an awful lot to how often you have to look at your strategic themes. Banks tend to be quite solid super tankers that don't change too often, although there's an awful lot of change in the financial services market now. Energy companies, big petro, they're long-termish as well. But there's loads of companies we work with that are far more short-term, and they make the mistake of thinking a strategy just means a long-term thing. Not really. A strategy is what really, really is going to move the dials in your company in the next 6 months. What are those things? And it's a different thing entirely. So the question was how often to review them, and the answer is honestly, it's how fast your market's changing. If you think of 3 dimensions of transformation right now, the one that's changing like you wouldn't believe is speed. Technology is changing, customers are changing. But the one that's really, really changing now is speed. It's going so fast that it changes. It's all part of that complex adaptive systems that are going on, our ability to react. It's all part of that. It's no longer the big fish that are the worry. It's the small fish. It's all part of, the Marriott deciding to do a huge building project and didn't really realize that Airbnb was coming. And suddenly Airbnb have got 14 times the number of hotel rooms that Marriott have, and Marriott will never catch them up. I could go on this point forever. I'll probably shut up now.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So I think it's all about which road are you driving on, how many potholes do you have, and how good are your progressive glasses, right? As Ian said, are you looking at the next pothole while you're focused on your destination? So that's what matters most. So again, I think we are almost coming to the end. There is one more question. Probably we can take that and then talk about the course that is getting launched. So do we set OKRs for portfolio level for each PI? How LPM measures the progress? Yeah.
It's a great question.
OKRs for portfolio at
Shall
each for each PI? Yeah.
So let's start quickly. I would have them higher than that. Honestly, I would have them higher than that. I'd have them more customer. I think at really good OKRs at customer level. So, if you've got a bank that's got 16 departments and they all have OKRs, I'd want to drive it back up to the big number at the top. It's about growth. It's about how many loans you sell. It's about how happy the customers are. I'd have the big OKRs, no more than 5 or 6 at that level, and get everything else aligned underneath it.
And just to kind of add to that, Ian, another way to look at it is while you have it at that level, maybe you can choose 1 or 2 key results which are prioritized for each PI.
Yeah.
So maybe you can look from that perspective that, hey, you know what? We have these 2 key results that we're trying to achieve, and we needed this yesterday. So let's put this into play. Let's see if this is a priority, make them or break them into features. And when we talk about PI, I'm assuming we're talking about a specific way of doing things without naming it. But I think it's about how can you kind of bring that within your PI and kind of try and achieve those. Maybe you might accelerate a little bit more and kind of go back. And I think it was more about how LPM measures those progress. Again, your OKRs, your key results become a way to measure your progress back, right? If it can be, we want to increase our organic growth from 10,000 to 15,000 or NPS. What are we doing from a customer centricity or customer centric perspective, and how is that changing? But for that, I think it's very important for us to know the current, where we are now, because otherwise we won't know the needle shift. We'll know where it is, but we don't know where did it shift from. Did it go
Yeah.
up or down? And I think, yeah, that's just my thought.
Great thoughts again. So yeah, I think one of the yes, Ian, go ahead.
Just you sparked me. This is what happens when we talk, which is great. This is why I'm looking forward to the course no end, because the sparking we have. What you need is some O's in the OKR need to be long term, for sure. You've got to take care of the long term. But what you're saying, Ash, I'd just summarize it like this. You also need to take care of some short-term ones as well and make sure they're clear. If I repeat what Navati said, you've got to look where the road is, but you've got to look for the pothole. You've got to have a mixture of both for it to really, really give you the secret sauce you need.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Otherwise, you are driving without a destination. It doesn't work. You need somewhere to go. So
or imagine driving your put with all you can do is see a mile in the head. Yeah, imagine driving like that. Wouldn't it be mad? The companies do that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely true. So I think we're having a great conversation. So Agile Visa, as we see here, is launching an LPM course, Lean Portfolio Management course, and you will have wonderful conversations like these. And we are also going to talk about the 9 principles of Lean Portfolio Management that IC Agile is advocating. You can head down to Agile Visa if you are keen to register. I think Ian and Ash already have few courses lined up there, so feel free to reach out and get your bookings done if you are keen on getting onto the course anytime soon. So, Ian, Ash, great having you here. Any last thoughts on what you're going to or how you're going to create that experience?
This can sound a bit weird, forgive me. When I watched men land on the moon, I thought, I want to do that. Yeah, they were the first. I want to be the second. I'm just saying, we're the first people ever to be given the privilege of teaching this course. I'm just so excited when we found out we got it. I mean, I went off and had some champagne, and that's very unusual for me. My good friends weren't in the same continents. We've never met physically. So, I did think about sending some champagne. To anyone who wants to come on the course, you could be one of the first people ever to do the course. I think that's I honestly think there are people who are going to go back and go, oh, yeah, I was on the first one of those.
Yep. And I think just to add to what Ian said, one of the things that I have kind of constantly got feedback, and I think we all have kind of tried to create or simulate as a part of this particular session and this workshop is, how can you do things hands-on? So it is not something that we're going to tell you step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, but we're going to create those steps as we move along based on case studies, based on actually exploring things together, based on kind of conversations, sharing experiences. And I think that is much more powerful when you're hands-on into doing things versus just me coming and kind of telling you this is what you need to do, right? And go ahead and do it. So I don't know if it will work or not, but I think we'll try to find more ways as a practitioner in terms of how can we explore different situations, different areas, different geographics. We've had so many folks from different parts of the world and the way they look at things versus how areas within the world look into different spaces. Very interesting. And I think sharing that experience becomes much more beneficial, I think, and it's much more energizing for me as well, because not only you learn from it, but I as an instructor and we as an instructor, I think we learn a lot from you guys as well on that.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks both of you for joining us today. It was great conversation and lots of learnings and reflections. So I look forward to more from us soon. Thank you. Have a great week ahead and see you
It's
soon.
going to be fantastic. There's nothing more exciting in my life right now than looking forward to doing these courses. You meet so many phenomenal people.
Yes. Ian, would you like to share the dates that you have?
So February is the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of Feb. I'm actually delivering that from Zambia. I'm in Zambia doing some business meetings with the government of Zambia. That could be quite interesting.
Lovely.
And then I can't remember my Feb dates, my March dates yet. I think it's the second week in March. Mine are always on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the week, because I like to can I be honest? I like to party on Fridays. So
Lucky
Yeah, I
you.
think they can look up to Agile Visa for sure.
Yeah.
And
they are all there. And I think actually, and this has annoyed me, Ash, you have got the first course, haven't you? You've got an
Yes.
earlier date than me. And I was like,
I'm
right.
on